The DJ announced the third slow song of the evening. And there she was again, my wife, pressed against her cousin's husband on the dance floor like they were the only two people in the room. This wasn't casual dancing anymore. This was something else entirely. I stood at the bar nursing my second beer, watching my wife of 8 years act like she'd forgotten she was married. Every single song since dinner ended, she'd been out there with him, his hands resting just a little too low on her back, her fingers playing with the hair at the base of his neck. The kind of touching that makes other couples at wedding receptions exchange uncomfortable glances. The worst part, she hadn't looked in my direction once. Not once. While the groom's parents were too caught up in their own conversations to notice what was happening between their son and my wife. But I noticed everything. The way she threw her head back and laughed at whatever he whispered in her ear. The way she accidentally brushed against him when they weren't even dancing. The way she'd chosen to wear that particular dress tonight. The red one that hugged every curve, the one she usually saved for date nights with me. Except tonight, apparently, it was for him. A server walked by with a tray of champagne flutes. I grabbed one and continued my observation. This wasn't jealousy talking. This was pattern recognition. My wife was testing boundaries, pushing limits, seeing exactly how far she could go before someone said something. The question was whether that someone would be me, her cousin, or the guy she was practically dry humping on the dance floor. The song ended, and instead of coming back to find me like any reasonable married woman would do, she immediately grabbed his hand when the next song started. A faster song this time, which somehow made things worse. Now she was grinding against him to an upbeat rhythm. Her hands on his chest, his hands gripping her waist like he owned her. I finished my champagne and set the glass down with deliberate precision. 8 years of marriage, and she never once behaved like this at any social event we'd attended together. 8 years of being the devoted husband, the supportive partner, the guy who always made sure she felt appreciated and respected. And this was what I got in return. A public humiliation disguised as innocent fun. The irony was almost amusing. Almost. Here I was dressed in my best suit, having spent 40 minutes this morning helping her pick out jewelry that would complement her outfit, and she was using the entire ensemble to attract another man's attention, a man who was married to her own family member, no less. I wasn't going to cause a scene. Not yet. That would be playing into whatever game she thought she was running. Instead, I was going to watch. I was going to remember every detail, every inappropriate touch, every moment she chose him over basic respect for her marriage. Because when this night was over, when the music stopped and the lights came up, we were going to have a conversation that would determine exactly what kind of wife I was really married to. The DJ announced the last call for the open bar. Perfect timing. I ordered another beer and settled in for the remainder of the show. My wife had made her choice about how to spend this evening. Now I was making mine. I was going to let her dig this hole as deep as she wanted because something told me that before this night was over, she was going to realize she'd miscalculated just how much her husband was willing to tolerate. And that realization was going to cost her more than she'd bargained for. I was halfway through my third beer when she appeared beside me at the bar. The recently divorced friend, the one my wife had been whispering with during the cocktail hour, the one who'd been eyeing me like a piece of prime real estate all evening. "You look lonely over here," she said, sliding onto the bar stool next to mine. Her dress was black, tight, and left very little to the imagination. The kind of outfit that screamed desperation wrapped in false confidence. Just enjoying the entertainment. I replied, jitting toward the dance floor where my wife was now doing some kind of salsa move that involved way too much hip action against her dance partner. She followed my gaze and smirked. "Oh, that. Yeah, Your wife's really letting loose tonight. Good for her. The way she said it made it clear she thought this behavior was perfectly normal. Maybe even encouraged it, I said, taking another sip of my beer. I wasn't giving her anything to work with. But she pressed on anyway, you know. She leaned closer, her perfume hitting me like a chemical weapon. My hotel room has an incredible view of the city skyline. 23rd floor. And since your wife seems occupied, maybe you'd like some company tonight. Someone who actually appreciates a good man when she sees one. There it was. The proposition I'd seen coming from a mile away. She was testing me, probably on my wife's behalf, or maybe just looking for a rebound hookup to make herself feel better about her recent divorce. Either way, she'd picked the wrong guy on the wrong night. I turned to face her fully, giving her my complete attention for the first time since she'd sat down. That's a generous offer, I said, my voice perfectly level. But I'm curious about something. Does my wife know you're over here propositioning her husband? Or is this your own little side project? Her confidence faltered for just a second, but she recovered quickly. I just thought you might want some appreciation. A man like you shouldn't have to sit alone at a bar while his wife dances with other men. A man like me? I repeated slowly. Doesn't need validation from someone else's leftovers. Before she could respond, I saw a movement in my peripheral vision. My wife had abandoned her dance partner Mi Dong and was practically running toward us, her face a mask of panic and fake concern. Apparently, she'd finally noticed where her husband was and who he was talking to. "Hey, baby," she said breathlessly, arriving at the bar like she'd just sprinted a marathon. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly. I almost admired the technique. Her divorced friend smiled sweetly. We were just chatting. "Your husband is quite charming." My wife's eyes darted between us, trying to read the situation. "That's nice," she said. But her voice had that edge that meant she was calculating damage control. "Actually, honey, I think we should probably head home soon. It's getting late, is it?" I checked my watch. "It's only 10:30. The party's just getting started. Besides, you seem to be having such a good time on the dance floor. Don't let me interrupt your fun." The panic in her eyes intensified. She could sense something had shifted, but she couldn't quite figure out what. Her friend, meanwhile, was enjoying the show, probably realizing she'd just lit a fuse on something much bigger than she'd anticipated. "I was just being social," my wife said, reaching for my arm. "You know how these family events are? Everyone expects you to dance with everyone." "Everyone?" I asked, gently pulling my arm away. Because from where I was sitting, it looked like you had a very specific dance partner preference tonight. Her friend's smile widened. She was definitely enjoying this now. "Well, I should probably get going," she said, standing up. "My room won't admire itself." She looked directly at me. "The offer stands if you change your mind." My wife's face went white. "What offer?" "Nothing important," I said, finishing my beer. "Just someone shooting their shot with the wrong target." As her friend walked away, my wife moved closer, lowering her voice. "What did she say to you?" I stood up, straightening my jacket. "The real question is what you've been doing all evening while I've been standing here watching you make a fool of yourself." "I haven't been making a fool of myself. I've been celebrating our cousin's wedding." "Our cousin?" I raised an eyebrow. "Last time I checked, she was your cousin. And last time I checked, married people don't usually celebrate by grinding against other married people for 3 straight hours." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Around us, the wedding reception continued. but our little corner of the bar had become its own private battlefield. And for the first time all evening, my wife was starting to realize she might not be winning this particular war. "You're being ridiculous," she said. But her voice lacked conviction. "It was just dancing. People dance at weddings. That's what you do." I nodded slowly. "You're absolutely right. People do dance at weddings. They dance with their spouses. They dance with family members. They might even dance with friends. What they don't do is spend the entire evening glued to one person while completely ignoring their husband." "I wasn't ignoring you." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and checked the time. "It's now 10:45. The dancing started at 7:30. That's 3 hours and 15 minutes. In that time, you've danced with me exactly 0 times, acknowledged my existence exactly 0 times, and spent approximately 90% of your time with your hands on another man." She shifted uncomfortably. "You're keeping track now." "That's creepy. What's creepy is watching your wife act single at a family wedding." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "What's creepy is having to sit at a bar while other people whisper about how inappropriate your wife is being. What's creepy is having another woman proposition me because she assumes I must be available given how my wife is behaving. She propositioned you." Her voice went up an octave. "Don't pretend you care. You were too busy with your hands and someone else's hair to notice what was happening to your actual husband." She tried a different approach, softening her voice. "Look, maybe I got a little carried away. It's been a stressful week and I just wanted to have some fun. Can't you understand that fun?" I repeated the word like I was tasting something bitter. "Is that what you call disrespecting your marriage in front of your entire family?" "Fun? I wasn't disrespecting anything. You're making this into something it's not." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone again because I've got about 15 text messages from your aunt asking if everything's okay between us. Apparently, she's concerned about how you've been acting tonight. Your own family is worried about your behavior. But somehow I'm the one making this into something it's not." Her face flushed. She hadn't expected that. My aunt doesn't understand modern relationships. Modern relationships. I couldn't help but laugh. "Is that what we're calling it when a married woman spends an entire evening inappropriately touching another married man? Modern? Because I'm pretty sure that's just called cheating. I didn't cheat on you yet." The word hung in the air between us like a challenge. But we both know where this was heading, don't we? How much longer before dancing turned into exchanging numbers? How much longer before those whispered conversations became private text messages? She opened her mouth to deny it, but I held up my hand. Don't lie to me anymore tonight. I've watched you for 3 hours. I've seen how you look at him. I've seen how you touch him. I've seen how you light up when he whispers in your ear, the same way you used to light up for me back when you actually remembered you were married to me. That's not fair." "Fair." I stepped back, creating distance between us. "You want to talk about fair?" Fair would have been dancing with your husband at least once tonight. Fair would have been introducing me to people instead of acting like I don't exist. Fair would have been behaving like a married woman instead of like a single woman hunting for her next conquest. The music from the dance floor seemed louder now, more intrusive. Around us, other couples were having normal conversations, normal interactions, normal marriages that didn't require crisis management at family weddings. "I think you're overreacting," she said. But there was no fire left in her voice. It really was just innocent dancing. "Innocent?" I nodded. "The way you pressed yourself against him was innocent. The way you ran your fingers through his hair was innocent. The way you completely ignored your husband for 3 hours was innocent. She looked around nervously, probably realizing that other people might be listening. Can we please not do this here? You should have thought about that before you decided to put on a show for everyone. I straightened my tie. But you're right. This isn't the place for this conversation. We'll finish it at home. What does that mean? I looked at her directly, making sure she understood every word. It means tonight was a test you didn't know you were taking, and you failed it spectacularly. A test. 8 years of marriage, and I thought I knew what kind of woman I'd married. Tonight, I found out I was wrong. I started walking toward the exit. The question now is what I'm going to do about it. She hurried to catch up with me. Wait, you can't just leave it like that. We need to talk about this. Oh, we will. I stopped and turned back to her. We're going to talk about a lot of things, starting with whether you actually want to be married or if you'd rather be free to dance with whoever catches your eye. For the first time all evening, she looked genuinely scared. Good. It was about time she realized that actions have consequences, even in modern relationships. The car ride home was silent, except for the hum of the engine and her occasional attempts to start a conversation that I shut down with single-word responses. She was testing the waters, trying to gauge exactly how much trouble she was in. By the time we pulled into our driveway, she'd figured out it was significant. Can we please talk about this like adults? She said as we walked into the house. Adults, I repeated, hanging up my jacket. Adults don't act like teenagers at family weddings. Adults don't spend 3 hours disrespecting their spouse in public. Adults take responsibility for their actions instead of calling their husband ridiculous for noticing. She kicked off her heels and followed me into the living room. Fine. You want me to take responsibility? I'm sorry. I got carried away. It won't happen again. I turned to face her. That's it. That's your idea of taking responsibility. What more do you want from me? How about starting with the truth? I sat down in my chair. The one she always complained was too big for the room. How long has this been going on? What do you mean? Nothing's been going on. Tonight was just dancing. Wrong answer. I pulled out my phone. See, while you were busy making a spectacle of yourself, I had some interesting conversations. Your cousin's maid of honor mentioned that you and him seemed pretty comfortable with each other during the rehearsal dinner yesterday. Apparently, you two were quite the pair during the line dancing. Her face went pale. We were just having fun. There's that word again. Fun. I scrolled through my messages. Then there's this text from your cousin's sister. She wanted to know if I was okay with you being so friendly with him at the bachelorette party last weekend. The one you told me was girls only. It was girls only. You just stopped by for like 10 minutes. 10 minutes of what exactly? She sat down on the couch, suddenly looking very small in that red dress that had caused so much trouble tonight. Look, maybe we've been a little flirty, but it doesn't mean anything. Flirty? I set my phone down. So, this has been building up for weeks, and tonight was just the grand finale. You're twisting everything, am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife has been carrying on an emotional affair right under my nose. And tonight, she decided to make it physical in front of our entire extended family. It's not an affair. We haven't done anything wrong. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet suburban street. The same street where we planned to raise kids someday, where we talked about growing old together, where we built what I thought was a solid marriage. You know what the worst part is? I said without turning around. It's not even that you did it. It's that you think I'm stupid enough to believe your excuses. I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you the truth. The truth. I turned back to her. The truth is that you've been emotionally checking out of our marriage for months. The truth is that you saw an opportunity with someone who gave you attention and you took it. The truth is that tonight, you crossed a line you can't uncross. She started crying then, the kind of tears designed to make me feel guilty for being upset. I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you. Do you? I walked back to my chair, but didn't sit down, because someone who loves their husband doesn't spend weeks flirting with another man. Someone who loves their husband doesn't ignore him for 3 hours at a family wedding. Someone who loves their husband doesn't make him a laughingstock in front of people who matter to both of them. I made a mistake. No, a mistake is forgetting to buy milk at the grocery store. A mistake is being late for dinner because of traffic. What you did was make a choice, multiple choices over multiple weeks that led to tonight's performance. She wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup. So, what happens now? Are you going to divorce me over some dancing? That depends entirely on what you do next. I finally sat down, maintaining eye contact. Because here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call him and tell him that whatever this thing is between you two is over. Completely over. No more texts, no more calls, no more accidentally running into each other. But he's family now. I can't just avoid him forever. You can and you will, because if I find out you've had any contact with him, that isn't absolutely necessary for family functions. If I discover one text message, or one phone call, or one coffee meeting, this marriage is over. You can't control who I talk to. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm not controlling anything. I'm giving you a choice. You can choose your marriage, or you can choose whatever fantasy you've been building with him. But you can't have both. That's not fair. Fair would have been you making better choices weeks ago. Fair would have been you remembering your marriage before you started this whole mess. We're way past fair now. She looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. The photos of our wedding, the furniture we'd picked out together, the life we'd built that she'd been so willing to risk for a few dances with someone else's husband. What if I can't do that? What if it's not that simple? Then you've just answered the question about whether you want to stay married. I stood up. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, you decide whether you want to fix this or whether you want to explain to everyone why your marriage fell apart right after your cousin's wedding. You would really end our marriage over this. I stopped at the doorway and looked back at her. I would end our marriage to preserve my self-respect. Something you seem to have forgotten, I still have. I woke up Monday morning with absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. While she was still sleeping off her hangover and her guilt, I was already 3 steps ahead, doing what I should have done months ago when the signs first appeared. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter when I came down for coffee. The same phone she'd been guarding more carefully lately. The same phone that had been buzzing with notifications she always seemed to check when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't need to invade her privacy. I had something better. I had her cloud backup that she'd forgotten was linked to my laptop from when we'd shared photos from our anniversary trip last year. 20 minutes later, I had everything I needed. Text messages going back 6 weeks. Photos that definitely weren't meant for her husband's eyes. Voice messages that made my stomach turn. The bachelorette party hadn't been a 10-minute visit. It had been a 3-hour affair that ended with them in his car talking until 2 in the morning. But the worst part wasn't the evidence of emotional cheating. The worst part was the conversation thread from Saturday afternoon before the wedding, where they'd planned their entire evening. Every dance, every moment, they'd choreographed my humiliation while I was getting dressed in my best suit. "You awake?" she called from upstairs. "In the kitchen," I replied, closing the laptop and taking a sip of my coffee. She came downstairs in her robe, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "We need to talk about last night. Actually, we need to talk about the last 6 weeks." I reopened the laptop and turned it toward her. "Starting with this conversation where you two planned out how you were going to spend the wedding reception together." The color drained from her face as she read her own messages. Messages about how she couldn't wait to dance with him all night. Messages about how her husband was too boring to notice anything anyway. Messages about how maybe they should find time to be alone together soon. "You went through my phone cloud backup. Technology is wonderful." I scrolled down to show her more. "Here's where you tell him you've been thinking about him constantly. Here's where he tells you he's been fantasizing about you. Here's where you both agree that your spouses are holding you back from being happy." She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. It's a 6-week emotional affair that was about to become physical." I kept scrolling. "Oh, here's my favorite part, where you tell him that your husband is so predictable and never figure out what's happening right under his nose." Stop. Why? This is your truth. This is what you really think of me, of our marriage, of the life we built together. I found another gem. "Here's where you call me boring and say you need someone who actually excites you." She was crying again. But these weren't manipulative tears. These were the tears of someone who'd been caught completely and utterly red-handed. "How long have you been planning to leave me?" I asked. "I wasn't planning to leave you." "Really?" "Because there's a conversation here from Friday where you talk about how maybe both of you should just get divorced and be together properly." That was just fantasy talk. We weren't serious. I turned the laptop back toward me and found the voice message from Saturday morning. I hit play. Her own voice filled the kitchen, breathy and excited. "I can't wait to see you tonight. I've been thinking about what it would be like to be with someone who actually appreciates me. Someone who makes me feel alive instead of just comfortable." I paused the message. Fantasy talk. She buried her face in her hands. "I never meant for you to hear that. I never meant to find out my wife was planning to cheat on me at her cousin's wedding. But here we are. I wasn't going to cheat. The only reason you didn't cheat is because your friend's proposition to me scared you into realizing you were about to lose control of the situation." I closed the laptop. "You've been emotionally cheating for 6 weeks. You've been planning physical cheating for at least 3 days. The only thing that stopped you was logistics and bad timing." She looked up at me with mascara-streaked cheeks. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can say that will change what I've seen here." I stood up and poured another cup of coffee. "But I'm curious about one thing. When exactly did you decide I wasn't good enough for you anymore?" "It's not that you're not good enough." "Then what?" "I'm too boring, too predictable, too trusting. Too stupid to notice when my wife is carrying on with another man for 6 weeks. You're not stupid. No, I'm not. Which is why I know this marriage is over." Her head snapped up. Over. Just like that. Just like that. This has been building for 6 weeks. You've been planning to betray me for at least 3 days. You spent Saturday night humiliating me in front of both our families. There's no just like that about this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling." "Counseling?" I laughed. But there was no humor in it. You want to go to counseling to work through your 6-week emotional affair with your cousin's new husband? You want to sit in a therapist's office and explain how you've been fantasizing about leaving me for someone else? People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate, calculated betrayal that you carried out over weeks while lying to my face every single day. She tried one last desperate play. I choose you. I choose our marriage. I'll cut off all contact with him. I'll do whatever it takes. The time for choosing was 6 weeks ago when he first started flirting with you. The time for choosing was 3 weeks ago when you started flirting back. The time for choosing was Saturday morning when you recorded that voice message. I looked at her with complete detachment. You already made your choice multiple times. You chose him. But I'm here now choosing you. No, you're here now choosing damage control. You're here now because you got caught. You're here now because your plan blew up in your face. I headed toward the door. I'll be staying at my brother's place until you find somewhere else to live. You're kicking me out. I'm removing myself from a situation where I can't trust the person I'm living with. Where you go from here is entirely up to you. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office finalizing the divorce papers when my phone buzzed with a text from my wife's cousin, the bride. Can we talk? Something's happened. I called her back immediately. What's going on? He left me, she said, her voice hollow. My husband left me. Found out about him and your wife. Apparently it didn't stop after the wedding. Of course it didn't. I'd known it wouldn't. Even though my soon-to-be ex-wife had sworn up and down that she'd cut off all contact. The cloud backup had told a different story. Messages that continued right up until I'd had the locks changed and her belongings packed. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Her cousin was collateral damage in a mess she'd never asked to be part of. There's more, she continued. I found their messages. They were planning to wait until after my honeymoon to tell us both they wanted to be together. They used my wedding as their cover story to start their affair. The pieces clicked into place. The elaborate planning, the public display, the complete disregard for consequences. They thought they were being clever, using family obligations as their excuse to be together, while their spouses played the role of unsuspecting fools. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm telling everyone. Our entire family, his family, everyone who was at that wedding and saw them together. I want them to know exactly what kind of people they are. I felt a surge of respect for her. She was handling this with the same no-nonsense approach I'd taken, refusing to be the quiet victim who suffered in silence, while the cheaters rewrote history to make themselves look better. Need any help with that? I offered. 2 days later, we met for coffee. She'd brought copies of the messages she'd found, and I'd brought printouts of the ones from my wife's cloud backup. Together, we'd assembled a timeline that showed exactly how calculated and deliberate their affair had been. Your wife called me yesterday, she said, stirring her latte. Wanted to explain her side and make sure I understood it was all just a misunderstanding. What did you tell her? I told her that anyone who uses my wedding as cover for an affair doesn't get to explain anything to me ever again. She smiled grimly. Then I told her that everyone in our family would know exactly what she did by the end of the week. My wife had been trying to control the narrative, telling people that our marriage had simply grown apart and that she'd found happiness with someone who understood her better. The fairy tale version where nobody was the villain and everyone just wanted to be happy. She's been telling people you were controlling and jealous. My cousin-in-law continued that you couldn't handle her having male friends. Let me guess, she's the victim in this story. Was the victim until I started showing people the messages where she calls you boring and stupid while planning to humiliate you at my wedding. By Friday, the truth was everywhere. Family group chats, social media, phone calls that lasted hours as people processed the reality of what had happened. My wife's parents called to apologize. Her sister called to express her disgust. Even her grandmother, who'd always been critical of me, called to say she was ashamed of her granddaughter's behavior. The best part came on Saturday when I got a call from my wife's divorced friend, the one who'd propositioned me at the wedding. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I thought you were just another boring husband who didn't appreciate what he had. Turns out you were the only decent person in that whole mess. What changed your mind?" Your wife called me crying yesterday, begging me to back up her story about how you were controlling and jealous. When I refused, she accused me of trying to steal you away from her. She laughed bitterly. The irony was too much, even for me. The final nail in the coffin came 2 weeks later when their affair imploded publicly. He'd promised to leave his wife for her. But when the family backlash hit and his job started asking questions about his conduct, he decided my ex-wife wasn't worth the trouble. She found out through a text message that he was staying with his wife and that she should move on with her life. She called me that night, sobbing and begging for another chance. "I made a terrible mistake," she said. "I threw away everything good in my life for someone who didn't even want me." "You're absolutely right." I told her, "You did throw away everything good, but not for someone who didn't want you. You threw it away because you wanted something more exciting than the husband who loved you. You got exactly what you were looking for. Please, we can start over. I'll do anything. There's nothing to start over. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't enough for you. Live with it." I hung up and blocked her number. There was no satisfaction in her pain, but there was peace in knowing that justice had been served naturally. She'd gotten exactly what she'd asked for: freedom from her boring, predictable husband and the excitement of being with someone who truly understood her. 6 months later, I was dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I was meeting women who valued loyalty, respect, and basic human decency. Women who understood that marriage meant something more than a convenient arrangement you could abandon when someone more exciting came along. My ex-wife, according to mutual acquaintances, was still single and struggling to rebuild her social life after burning bridges with most of our friend group. Her cousin had made sure that everyone knew exactly what kind of person she was, and that reputation followed her everywhere. The last I heard, she was working at a new job in a different city, trying to start fresh where nobody knew her story. But starting fresh only works if you've actually learned from your mistakes. Based on the voice messages I'd heard and the messages I'd read, I doubted she'd learned anything except that getting caught has consequences. As for me, I'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the full consequences of their actions. I'd learned that self-respect isn't negotiable. And I'd learned that the right woman will never make you feel like you have to compete for her attention. My ex-wife had taught me one final lesson. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. And when they prove they're not worthy of your love and respect, walk away with your dignity intact. I'd done exactly that. And I'd never felt better about a decision in my life.